Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, let's take a look at trade and its effect on the economy of Pennsylvania. But first, guess what? It's less than 3 weeks before the May 17th primary. We're going to take a look at the big elections back after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, believe it or not, after all the television commercials and the campaigning, the May 17th primary is almost upon us. We're going to talk today about the governor and U.S. Senate elections, and joining me to do that are two reporters, Jan Murphy, she's the Capitol reporter with PennLive and the Patriot News, and Marc Levy, he is with the Associated Press. All right, Mark, let's start with the Democratic Senate primary. It looks like a guy named John Fetterman, lieutenant governor, has a pretty substantial lead in the polls, and he also has raised far more money than his other primary opponents. Take it.
That's right. I mean, look, he's got a pretty strong profile going back to his days as the mayor of Braddock when he was sort of a minor media star there. He ran for U.S. Senate in 2016 and lost in the primary, and then, of course, ran for lieutenant governor. And during the 2020 election, during that whole stretch, he was on MSNBC and CNN all the time as sort of carrying the shield for Joe Biden. And he's well known, and he's got primary challengers that, to the extent that we know, have not really dented his popularity. One of them is Congressman Conor Lamb, who has tried to portray Fetterman as too liberal and someone who will be beaten in the general election because of that.
They actually said he referred to himself as a socialist, which I guess was not.
Well, John Fetterman denies that. He says,
I
never referred to myself as a democratic socialist. But beyond that, Fetterman in 2016 endorsed Bernie Sanders for president over the establishment candidate Hillary Clinton. And so that symbiosis there with then Bernie Sanders endorsing John Fetterman for lieutenant governor in 2018 has sort of been the touchstone for Conor Lamb to say that Fetterman is too liberal. He'll be destroyed in the general election by Republicans.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he's a progressive, and you're in the Capitol, and when he was elected lieutenant governor, arrived on the scene, it was his size and personality that seemed to dominate everything, wasn't it?
It sure did. It sure did. And I got to say, I mean, the one assignment that Governor Wolf gave him was, to go on his marijuana legalization tour, and he definitely has made that, that's become quite an issue. It's one even Republicans are now taking interest in, and that resonates with Pennsylvania. I mean, the polls show that's popular.
Yeah, good point. And he's obviously much better known than the other candidates, which
much better known.
Doesn't seem to have emerged with an identification statewide, correct?
Right. And the campaigns have helped him, not only the marijuana legalization tour, but running statewide 2 times before. Sort of has fit into his strategy of running in farther flung counties, in redder areas where there are Democrats, to try to capture votes there.
All right, let's get to the Republican U.S. Senate primary. I'll tell you, you want to talk about a knockdown, drag-out contest that doesn't seem to quit, right?
Yeah, so we've got, my count is more than $50 million has already been spent on this primary, primarily by 2 candidates and their super PACs, Dr. Oz, the TV celebrity and heart surgeon, and David McCormick, the hedge fund CEO from Connecticut. Dr. Oz moving here from New Jersey. It's sort of an extremely strange race where we have 3 very well-connected, very wealthy candidates moving from blue states to Pennsylvania to run in a purple state, a battleground state where a Republican can win.
Right.
And everyone who watches TV knows these commercials. They've blanketed the airwaves to the extent that people in the governor's race are saying that there may be really no room for our TV commercials because everything is booked.
Yeah, and by the way, they're both accused of being, this is the outsider, because one of them was born in Pennsylvania, reared in Pennsylvania, but moved to Connecticut. Am I right about that?
Right. That's right.
And the other one, Dr. Oz, was born in Delaware, the state of Delaware, and it's all about who's a resident of Pennsylvania, carpetbagging, right?
That is so true. And Carla Sands is another.
Yeah, she's another candidate, and she spent time in California, right?
Right.
That's right, about 4 decades, and that has been, the carpetbagging has been a persistent campaign theme, as has, the question of why are we as Republicans electing just a rich candidate because they're rich. There are several other candidates in the race. A couple of them, Jeff Bartos and George Pichetto from Philadelphia, have loaned themselves money, but nothing on the order of, Carla Sands, David McCormick, and Dr. Oz have put more than $20 million combined of their own money into their races, and it may be a lot more than that by the end of the primary.
All right, let's run to a break. When we come back, let's take a look at the governor's race, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, let's take a look at the gubernatorial primary. On the Democratic side, Josh Shapiro, the current Attorney General, is running unopposed. But boy, what a battle for the Republican nomination. Jan Murphy, there are 9 candidates, with 4 of them thought of and mentioned as, quote, the front runners. And I just said, I'm not saying that, but that's at least that's been in the news. Take it.
Right. Well, we saw those 4 candidates debate and this past week, and it was, it clearly was an interesting debate. I think that the 5 that weren't included felt that they should have been on that stage, and but we clearly are seeing that all the candidates that there's so much in common, across the board on their positions that now they're trying to. I think in our talk before we said about that they're trying to frame themselves like, okay, Dave White is the one time he called himself the lunch pail carrying worker guy,
right.
And McSwain's labeling everyone else in the field a politician, which that's not exactly true either. Right.
He's the conservative
outsider.
Right.
It's a very heated heated contest there for that Republican nomination, and Josh Shapiro, he's just pulling in money. He's up to $18-19 million, and we don't really know, exactly how he differs on all the issues with the Republicans.
Yeah, Jan makes a great point. I mean, now what they're trying to do, it looks like, is forget about the specific issues, but trying to build a framework around which to describe themselves as different, and why that difference is really important. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So at the debate we saw, Doug Mastriano repeatedly referred to his service in the Army and call himself, the only combat veteran on stage. We saw Bill McSwain talk about his Marine service. He's the only prosecutor on stage.
Yeah.
He tried to portray the others as politicians, and he's the outsider. Lou Barletta tried to stress his experience, and when McSwain talked about being, a prosecutor, Barletta said, I was the mayor of a town. I dealt with the police. I dealt with law enforcement and crime, and then the 4th one on stage, Dave White was saying, I'm a regular guy. He didn't go to college. He's a steam fitter. He built his own business. I signed the back of paychecks. I'm the only one who's run the business. So they, to the extent that they are identical on the issues, they need to.
So. Now, I'll tell you, the one thing we have to take a look at Trump. I mean, Trump in the Senate race did endorse Dr. Oz. On the Senate, on the gubernatorial, he's not endorsed anyone, but Mastriano has certainly been the Trump person, meaning he agreed with Trump, number one, that there was widespread corruption. He wanted to subpoena election officials in 3 counties.
Right.
How important is the Trump factor here?
I think, last night or at the debate we did hear, all of them are interested in getting that endorsement. And President Trump is coming to Pennsylvania next week or this week.
Sure.
Who knows? With him, you never know. It's the unexpected, and so maybe we'll get an endorsement out of that. But we have Jake Corman, the Senate President Pro Tem, has Kellyanne Conway,
right.
and she's now doing a commercial to promote him. So, he's got an in there. Dave White said he talked to the president. We have Mastriano's, Gettysburg hearing and the Trump calling into there. Lou Barletta, was the first Pennsylvania congressman to come out and endorse Trump. I mean,
right. It's all about Trump.
It is. It really, he weighs heavily into our Pennsylvania primary.
Well, look, great update. Thanks for coming in. All right, I'll tell you what, trade in Pennsylvania, it's important. We'll get into the business of why it's important. I think most of us know, but also the Ukrainian situation and how that is affecting trade. And we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, joining me now is Wilfred Muskens. He's the International Business Advisor to the Marquis Group. He's also the Honorary Consul to Holland. You've been on the program before, and we're delighted to have you because what you can do is relate what's going on around the world, and particularly in Europe, to trade and the economy in our state.
Right.
And right now we have the Ukrainians fighting magnificently against the Russians.
Definitely.
But they're huge producers of wheat. So Pennsylvania is also a wheat growing state. But more broadly first, how is what's going on in Ukraine and in Europe in general affecting the trade in our state?
Well, thank you, Terry, for having me on again. I feel at home here.
Good.
Well, trade is something that affects, that's affected by world events, generally speaking. So Pennsylvania is always affected by what happens in other states and in other countries, in a positive or in a negative way. So what's happening in Ukraine right now? You mentioned agriculture. Yeah, that's one major impact because, the breadbasket of the world, right? Russia and Ukraine are both in not a very good situation right now, particularly Ukraine. And a lot of countries are dependent on wheat exports coming from Ukraine. For example, in Africa, where there's already major issues with, feeding the people that are living there. So that makes those problems even worse. So they're going to have to look at other sources of production.
Right.
So it sounds maybe opportunistic or pragmatic, but it's an opportunity for other producing countries to enter markets where they weren't present, or to grow new markets where they weren't present, even though nobody wants war. And
Does that cause the prices to go up of certain agricultural products?
Oh, certainly, yeah, certainly. When there's a lack of production or the production goes down substantially, the price goes up. Look at gas or oil. Yeah, and talking about gas, that's the other sector I was going to say. Agriculture is one, and the other one is power. Of course, the power of power. There's the power of energy sector. And how Russia is, of course, abusing that power now, or using that power, if you want, to leverage or to blackmail, you can say, countries like Poland or Germany or many others that have grown too dependent on one source of energy, and they regret that now. You can see how when you make those types of decisions long term, and you have to have a long-term strategy and diversify the economy.
We have the big debate. Obviously, climate change is an important. What do we do about, particularly natural gas in our state, which could help supply Europe in addition to other Massachusetts, other states that in particular are having severe energy shortfalls.
Yeah, I know Pennsylvania is in a unique and certainly positive situation because we have the resources in Pennsylvania. Now we were the powerhouse for the world, right? In the Industrial Revolution, we produced energy, we produced steel, we produced coal. Well, coal, although it's coming back to some extent in countries like Germany because they have to, because they just don't have enough natural gas or renewable energy sources. We have fracking, right? We have natural gas in Pennsylvania, and of course it's how do you say that? There are people against and for it.
Yeah, it's a hotly debated.
Subject, but energy is the lifeblood of the economy, and if you see, for example, Germany has the possibility to lose supply from Russia, supply of natural gas from Russia, although it's not in the Russian interest to do that right now, but they do have that power. They do have the possibility to just close off the supply. And the German economy would be in shambles. It would be in a very bad situation. Poland is also going to suffer from it, although they're prepared for it. So at least for this year, they seem to be okay in terms of energy supply. Bulgaria is a much smaller client for Russia. So I think Russia strategically decided, let's start with Poland and Bulgaria. They're relatively small customers compared to Germany or Italy. But they're sending a signal, right? They're sending a signal to Germany or Italy or others. We can do this to you as well. But it would be shooting themselves in the foot because that's how they get foreign currency right now, right? How do they get money? By selling their energy. And their economy is already doing terribly badly, so,
All right, we're going to run to a break. You also want to talk about immigration in our state, and we'll get to that after these words.
Thanks, Terry.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, Wilfred, let's talk about Pennsylvania and immigration.
Immigration is something that is personal to me because I came here as an immigrant, so first of all, I wouldn't be here if there wasn't legal immigration in the United States. And I have Governor Tom Ridge to thank for that because I was hired by his administration. So I know how difficult it is to come into the U.S. As a legal immigrant. I'm just talking legal here. It's not easy to get a visa. Even if you have a job offer, it's hard. And it's only gotten harder, over the last 20 years. So the first thing I want to say is companies need employees. We know, everybody's looking for employees. We want skills to stay in the United States, people that come here as students. But they can't stay here because their visa doesn't allow them to get a job here.
Right.
So we're losing all those people that we get here that are very smart people from India, from China, from Saudi Arabia, from Brazil. And they go back not because they want to necessarily, but because we don't give them the opportunity to stay here, set up a company and create jobs. That's so unfortunate. I think we're missing out as an economy.
And we're obviously having a big debate about illegal immigration in the Mexican-U.S. border, correct?
Yeah. That's, of course, a very political issue. I will just say...
But it doesn't seem to be a political issue with, immigrants coming from Europe and coming from, Southeast Asia. It's just crossing our border illegally. That's the question.
Yeah, and I sometimes have to think when politicians talk about that, I'm thinking, okay, think about your parents, think about your grandparents. How did you end up here, right?
Right.
If your parents weren't allowed in here, would you be in this country? Would you be a politician now? If your grandparents wouldn't be allowed in from Poland or from Russia or from whatever country they came, Ireland, So think about it and put yourself back in that position and think about the people that are trying to come in now and looking for the American dream.
Yeah.
You know, don't we want those people to have the same opportunity? So we're becoming a little selfish, right? We forget about our own origin, I think.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right, I got to ask you about India. India is, in a sense, sort of, that we have important trade relations with India and other relationships, but they're also sort of trapped with Russia, the Ukrainian situation, with Europe, and with the United States.
Well, India is an important trading partner for the U.S. It's a growing trading partner in importance for imports and exports. And of course, we have strong relationships with India also because of diaspora. You know, we have a major Indian diaspora.
Right.
Look in the Philadelphia area, Chester County, for example, where there's so many Indians and many of them highly educated. You know, you probably have doctors that are from India, you know, we all do. Mm-hmm. We have engineers from India in our tech companies. So
a lot of students.
A lot of students. And so our economies are already highly integrated. So they're a friendly nation, of course. They're the largest democracy, by the number of inhabitants by far in the in the world. So it's in our interest as the United States to have a good and healthy working relationship with India. Now, for internal and political reasons, their position on the Ukraine war is a little different than ours and than most of the Western world. But I think India has a lot of opportunity also for renewable energy. Now, I represent a region in India which is on the Arabian Sea in India. It's called the state of Gujarat and the region of Kutch. They're building right now the largest renewable energy park in India, and I think even in the world, major park with windmills and solar panels. India is really highly investing in renewable energy, and they need to, right? There's so many rural areas. It's a huge country. People can't connect to the grid necessarily, so they need to get the solar panels, for example. And they're also investing in electric vehicles, for example. There recently was a company that announced they were building an electric vehicle factory, also in the state of Gujarat. So I think we can do a lot with India. We need to continue to host Indian students in Pennsylvania, and there are many in many of our schools, but we could probably get more. I mean, I'm working with a couple of organizations in India that are high schools and universities that are looking for schools in Pennsylvania to send Indian students to. So there is more interest. There is more interest. We can host more students from India. And I think we should, because it's in a little bit in our self-interest.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on. You're also the honorary consul to Holland. We'll have to get you back, and we normally don't think of Holland and the United States having, an important relationship, but we obviously do.
It's a small country, but big impact.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.